In the late 90s, Metroid was dead. Nintendo had moved on, Samus was out of action. And then they handed her fate to an unproven studio in Texas. A team with no experience, a team on the verge of collapse, and against all the odds, made a very controversial decision and ended up creating one of the greatest games of all time. But how did Metroid Prime take the franchise from the brink of destruction to the pinnacle of first-person gaming? Well, Nintendo handed it over to a brand new studio that had never developed even a single game before. Nintendo just does Nintendo things. And if you want to hear about Nintendo doing more Nintendo things, but in my stupid fucking voice, which this guy thinks sounds like Jar Jar Binks, then like and maybe subscribe. Yes, even though Retro Studios would become known for other masterpieces like the Donkey Kong Returns games, this was back when they had done nothing. So, let me take you little gremlins on a little time-traveling journey if you don't mind. See, before Metroid's 3D debut on the GameCube in 2002, it had been 8 years since the last Metroid game, Super Metroid, had released way back on the Super Nintendo, effectively skipping a whole generation, which is the N64. And I kid you not, Shigeru Miyamoto, no introduction needed, stated that the reason why they didn't release a Metroid game on the N64 was because they had no idea what the fuck to do. Goddamn! Bro said the company couldn't come up with anything. Metroid co-creator Yoshio Sakamoto also stated that he couldn't imagine how the Nintendo 64 controller could be used to control Samus. And I don't blame him. I mean, they got Mario to work on it, but you gotta remember that Metroid was always a bit more complex than Mario, being that it was a side-scrolling shooter with way more complex design, and not just a simple side-scroller like Mario was. Also, they were in the elementary days of 3D gaming, so I see why they were a bit scared to take that jump with a series like Metroid. I mean, sure, Metroid isn't the most commercially successful Nintendo franchise or anything. Oh no, that would be like calling Margarita pizza food. It ain't true! But Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo, because everything had to be named Super, was pretty successful, and critically, it was received incredibly well, with fans and critics alike heavily praising the visuals, sound design, and level design of the game. So Nintendo eventually decided to let another studio take on the Metroid mantle and tackle the problem of converting this into this. They made the very bold and controversial decision to make Metroid a first-person shooter.
First-person shooter mode.
What the fuck? I'll explain why they did this. Now, see, I'm not huge on first-person shooters. I've said this multiple times on this channel. God damn, everyone's tired of hearing that now. I mean, I love Doom Eternal. I abhor the rest. Sure, it's mostly because I suck at them, and I'm not afraid to admit that. So since we're admitting things, I'll also add that I enjoyed Velma. Could you not kill me? Look, if I'm being honest, I wouldn't have liked the news about Metroid transitioning into a first-person shooter if I knew what Metroid was at the time. Like, y'all have a good thing going on here. Why make Samus invisible? Why make the shooting more complicated than it needs to be? But you see, that's why they're the developers and I'm the YouTube guy. At least I'm trying to be. Retro Studios was created in 1998 as a direct result of an alliance, not deadly, between Nintendo and former game producer Jeff Spangenberg. Jeff SpongeBob, god damn it! This studio was crafted as part of Nintendo's crucial plan to create games for the upcoming GameCube, targeted at a more mature demographic. They did this in a bid to expand their audience and hopefully outsell the N64. Well, how did that go? You win some, you motherfucking lose some, baby! Apparently in 1999, when Shigeru Miyamoto visited Retro Studios, he noticed something interesting. See, Retro had been working on a bunch of prototypes for the GameCube at this point. Nothing substantial, but after taking a look at their shooter game engine, Miyamoto struck ideological gold. Metroid, he yelled, and shared out bananas to everyone in the office. Okay, that didn't really happen. What the fuck am I saying? But he immediately thought of how Metroid could be translated into this game engine, and the rest was history. Also, I gotta say, is this man just like associated with every single big franchise Nintendo has? Like anything Miyamoto lays his hands on turns to gold. Except this one.
What the hell is even that?
Anyway, that's a potential topic for another day. Around early 2001, the newly found Retro Studios decided to cancel 4 other games that they had in development. They did this in an effort to focus solely on Metroid Prime. Now, developing Metroid Prime was no small task. According to former Retro Studios developer Jack Matthews, when the studio first made a test demo for Metroid Prime, they made the game a third-person shooter in the very beginning. They were just testing things out. A third-person shooter, not first-person. They had a really basic demo of Samus running in between doors, and immediately Nintendo saw it. They said, nope, we're not having none of that fuckery. Fix it, or you're all fired, goddamn. They wanted first-person. Why did they want first person? Well, basically to appeal to the West. Nintendo said it, don't ask me why. So Nintendo had figured out that Metroid wasn't really the shit in Japan. It was more of a Western audience thing, with Miyamoto being barraged with questions about when Metroid was coming to the N64 whenever he visited the United States. According to the former Retro developer again, Jack Matthews, the whole reason why Retro Studios was chosen to make Metroid Prime was that Nintendo wanted a Western studio specifically to make the game, to more easily appeal to Western audiences. So they also felt really strongly that the first-person view would massively appeal to the West, and I can't say why they thought this, but hey, guess they weren't wrong. But see, the thing is, transforming Metroid into 3D was no easy feat. During the last 9 months of development, Retro Studio staff reportedly worked 80 to 100-hour weeks in order to reach Nintendo's insane deadline. It took them almost 6 months to make the first level that Nintendo finally approved of. And then they had less than a year to make the rest of the game. God damn, that is wild to think of. Like, Nintendo, do y'all want a tech demo or a full-blown game? The hectic development cycle had some devs sleeping in the office and waking up to resume work again. It was tough on them. And the pressure wasn't all just from Nintendo either. I mean, Retro Studios took developing the first 3D Metroid game as a huge honor. But you gotta understand, this was an unknown studio that hadn't made any game before, so they had to prove themselves, and they were taking on a beloved series. Essentially, they really couldn't fuck this one up. Retro Studios didn't want to just make another first-person shooter. Making a generic first-person shooter would have been a cheap and easy way to go. But making sure the themes and concepts and those intricacies that make Metroid Metroid were properly and carefully translated over into 3D was what they really wanted to achieve here. This was a huge reason why the whole development was so hardcore. Translating those characteristic Metroid quirks into a 3D space was a real challenge. I mean, the eerie atmosphere, the backtracking focused level design, and sweet Lord Jesus, translating the morph ball into fluid 3D movements was one of the hardest things to do. Apparently. But in the end, it all came together perfectly. The game would eventually release to critical acclaim in November of 2002 for the GameCube, and go on to spawn 2 sequels, with all 3 games being widely regarded as some of the best shooters of all time, heck, even some of the best games of all time. And don't forget about Metroid Prime 4, which should be coming this year. Metroid Prime specifically, though, is regarded as the best in the entire series by a lot of people, and due to popular demand, it was remade in 2023 for the Switch. No wait, remastered. But it looks like a proper graphical overhaul. So shouldn't this be a remake? But Nintendo say it's a remaster. Nintendo also say I should pay for a calculator. What the fuck do they know? Anyway, ladies and dirty doggy gentlemen, thanks for watching my sleazy peasy video. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see me talk about something mildly less stupid next time. And enjoy one of these videos for now. Until next week, suckers.